What's the one question that you can ask to help you manage your emotions, make better decisions, and even improve your mental health? Well, I'm going to tell you. This is Dr. Greg Cason, and this is Off the Couch. You know, I'm not a fan of instant mental health solutions. I have a lot of clients who come in who want an instant solution. They want to be fixed right away. And generally that doesn't happen. If you have a problem that's developed over time, you're not going to have a fix that happens instantly. But there is one thing that you can do that helps you, of course, manage your emotions, to make better decisions, and even improve your mental health. And that's all based on the concept of something called cognitive flexibility. You know, Albert Ellis, who was considered the grandfather of cognitive therapy, he would always say that all mental illness is based in cognitive rigidity and all mental health is based in cognitive flexibility. So when you have cognitive rigidity, that means that your thoughts are really held in one place. You have an absolute idea of what the world should be, what you should be, and what other people should be. We have rules for how people should act and what they should do. We think we know what's right, and we think we know what's wrong, and we can't be persuaded to think any other way. That cognitive rigidity actually causes people to be more depressed, more anxious, more paranoid about the world, more angry, and just take on more stress. It generally leads to a much more unhappy life. But there is one thing that you can do to increase your cognitive flexibility, which is the antidote, which is to start asking yourself questions. And there's one question that really seems to make all the difference. That question is, when you think a thought, let's say you think that you're going to go in for a job interview and you're going to do terribly, and you hold on to that idea. You get a picture in your head that you're going to do terribly in a job interview. By the way, when you start thinking about something and really focusing on something in your head, you're more likely to make it come true. The thoughts you focus on are the thoughts that you make come true. So what can you do? Well, one thing you can do is just introduce a couple of other competing thoughts to actually cause your thought process to expand. That thought process of expanding causes cognitive flexibility. So in thinking you're going to do terribly on a job interview, which would be the rigid thought, you could think, hey, what would be two competing thoughts? And the way to get two competing thoughts to make your thought process more flexible would be to think, what's the best, worst, and most likely outcome? The best outcome is you're going to do swimmingly, things will be amazing, and you'll get the job interview, and you'll smash the job interview, and you'll get the job offered to you right away. Maybe the worst outcome would be they yell at you and scream at you, tell you you're not qualified and you should never have even applied, you're a terrible candidate, get the hell out. And maybe the most likely is they'll listen to you, you'll ask some questions, they'll shake your hand and they'll let you know. That's usually what happens in job interviews, and then you find out later if you got the job or you didn't. That's the best, worst, and most likely outcome. You can apply that to just about any situation. Let's say you're taking a test, you've got a test coming up, and you're really worried about how you're going to do. You think you won't remember all of the information. Well, and then you'll fail the test, of course. I often will think, some people think they're going to fail the test, and then they will fail the course, and then they will fail out of college, and then they won't get a good job in life, and then they'll end up homeless, and they'll never be able to work again. That's actually the kind of thinking process that some people have. But let's go back to the example of best, worst, and most likely. One thing you can do in that example is to think, well, you might think I'm going to fail the test, I won't remember anything. Well, that's really unlikely if you've studied, and in fact, if you study at least a few days in advance, sleep on it, think about it, talk about it with friends, you're probably going to have some grasp on the knowledge of the test information and test material. So one thing you can do is to ask yourself, what's the best, worst, and most likely outcome of taking the test? Of course, the best outcome is that you get an A+. Everything goes well, you don't miss a single one. The worst outcome is that you get a complete 0, and the most likely outcome is you'll get somewhere in between. depending on how well you studied and how hard the course is, etc., you'll probably get somewhere in between. Now, will you fail the course? Well, that's pretty unlikely if you actually take all the tests and turn in all the work. Will you fail out of college? That's pretty unlikely as well, and we could go on down the line. What's the best, worst, and most likely outcome? It's actually very rare for the worst situation to ever come to be, but it's also very rare for the best situation to ever come to be. But if you hold all three possibilities, the best, worst, and most likely outcome, and you hold them all together equally in your mind, you actually create something which I talked about, which is called cognitive flexibility, that will ease your mind. Now, why does that help with emotion? Well, that helps with emotion because, again, cognitive rigidity leads to some harsh emotions, especially very harsh anger like rage. It leads to depression. It can lead to high levels of anxiety, even panic, and severe stress. So holding those very rigid thoughts can lead to some more severe emotions. If you can hold more flexible thoughts, that'll help you decrease your emotional overload and be able to manage things. It helps you make decisions because when you think that there's only one outcome, you only go for one solution. If you think something is going to be terrible, you're going to fail a test, you're going to be thrown in jail, or that you won't get that date, or you'll be laughed out of school, it'll lead you to do things that might make those outcomes more likely. Maybe a better thing to do is just hold that you have several possibilities, and then you can actually make a better decision more in line with what you want and what your values are. And also, why does it help with mental health? Well, it helps with mental health just because we start to see the world in a more realistic way. There is no right or wrong in the world. The world is not fair. The world doesn't always look the same to every person. Different cultures look upon things different ways. People at different ages look upon things different ways, and people with different life experiences look upon things different ways. Often people with a lot of money are very insulated from the world and don't understand how hard the world is for people who don't have a lot of money. So we often have to hold that people can have different realities because of different life experiences. So instead of looking at the world through a rigid lens where we start to see things only through one way, maybe we can just start asking ourselves questions that can help lead us to more flexibility, to help us see that the world has many different outcomes and many different possibilities that can help us and others and our world become a better place. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, and this is Off the Couch.